Welcome to Alumni Live, the podcast. These are conversations with Grand Valley State University film and video graduates about the industry, the film video major, and alumni profiles.
Hey guys, how do I sound? How do I look?
Both great.
Sounds good.
Okay.
To me. Looks good to me.
We are live with the Grand Valley alumni discussion here with Charles Beale and Jake Bowen. Hey guys. So we're going to be talking, we are live right now, and we're going to be talking for, I think, between 45 minutes and an hour about what it means to be a micro budget filmmaker in today's era and how to kind of navigate your place through this industry and hear what Jake and Charles have been up to after graduation, which has been about 10 years now, and hear what they're up to. My name is Joel Potrykus. I am a professor at Grand Valley and a filmmaker as well. I'm going to be moderating this discussion. Hopefully we can shed some insight on the process of what it means to be an independent filmmaker with not a lot of money and not a lot of resources and trying to fight your way through. So let's start with Jake. Jake, where are you coming from right now?
I'm currently at my parents' place in Grand Haven, Michigan. I'm actually in between. I just moved out of Ohio, and a few days from now, I'm moving to LA. So I'm kind of in transition right now.
What's going on in Ohio? What's going on?
Sure. My wife was finishing her PhD at a school there, and so I was living in Oxford. It's like southwest Ohio. But she just did that. She's a doctor now and a PhD. She's in biology. And so she has a job out in Whittier, California, which is right outside LA. So we're heading there soon.
Rule number one for the struggling independent filmmaker, marry into money. You are, I believe you are also beaming from Michigan as well, but where's your roots right now, or where are you in transit from?
Yeah, so New York is actually where I've been based for the past 3-4 years with my partner, Jess, who's also part of Studio Fest, which we'll talk about later. So right now I'm also visiting my parents in Michigan. We actually bought a motorhome for $3,000 and have been outfitting it into a production vehicle and doing the rounds before we head out and try and figure out what the next step is while we're producing a couple films.
Let's just stop right there. Explain the motorhome. What is the idea behind this?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you get into micro budget filmmaking, you find that there's so many things that can be done cheaper or more efficiently. There's a lot of waste in big films, and you don't have that kind of money or the ability to waste that in micro budgets. So we know that one of the films coming up requires somebody who is an elderly person. So we got to have somewhere that they can rest and relax on set. But some of our sets are going to be mobile. So we decided, well, we're going to have to rent a motorhome or some sort of production vehicle where talent can relax. And we're looking at prices, and it's like, well, maybe we can find something that we could buy that would cost about the same amount as how much we would be spending in rent. So we just found something on Facebook Marketplace, $3,000. We've been outfitting that, and it's looking like a pretty sweet production vehicle now.
So you're not going to live in this though, right?
Or I think that's part of being a micro budget filmmaker is loving everything, stretching the dollar. And so we're living rent free for a couple of months while we produce.
I think that's so awesome because, I mean, people like, when it comes to independent filmmaking, there are no rules. And people, I think when they go to school and when they graduate, they expect to like go to an office where they get an application and a rule book, and this is how you make a movie, and this is where you go. And there isn't anything like that in the industry. It's not like you get your PhD and you just go, apply at a job. And so everybody's kind of making their own way. So I'm actually pretty envious that you may actually be living in this, and it'll be a talent trailer, and you're going to have all of your gear and things in there. So
yeah, we'll be
studio
storing underneath. We're going to outfit it also to do like podcasts and audio recordings. So while it probably won't be a great ADR set or studio, it will be good for something that we can record, which we're branching out into like audio plays and things like that. But yeah, oddly enough, this motorhome has more square footage than our apartment in New York.
Okay. So that's what I was going to ask. So you're based, you and Jess are in New York. And what are you going to do with the motorhome while you're in New York?
Well, that's a big question right now. The question really is, are we even going to go back to New York? Because right now, with COVID and how things are going, we might find that things are on lockdown and, going in and out for the next year and a half, 18 months. So our thought is micro budget filmmaking is really going to be one of the only ways to make films effectively, efficiently, and safely for, the foreseeable future. And so we're thinking, what's going to best accommodate that? In New York City, it's just not the best place to make ultra low budget things. There's a lot of red tape. It can be a lot more difficult than, making something in Michigan, making something in the woods in Grand Rapids.
Yeah. So one of the big questions when somebody graduates from a film program is, do I go out west and essentially work for other people and make your way up the ranks? Or do you go live wherever you want, Michigan, New York, Tennessee, and make your own thing and carve out your own kind of voice? And so, Jake, what was the first move and what was the decisions after you graduated? Was there a kind of big dilemma of what to do?
Really, I kind of early on had that came to that conclusion that I didn't see the purpose of moving out west. I actually really value the ability to go out on some street, even in a busy area in the Midwest. No one's going to hassle you about that. They'll be like, oh, he's taking a picture or something, and not have to get, worry about permits and things like that. I think that in the, kind of the current era with the internet and everything, I just don't really see that I didn't see the need to be geographically located in LA to still get most of what I would need out of LA. I could be there for a period of time if I had to be or something, or even live there for a period of time, but I never saw that as imperative. So it's kind of ironic actually that I'm about to move there, not because of my career, but because of my wife's in biology. So yeah, that was never an issue for me. I always figured I'd live wherever I wanted to. So.
And so after graduation, where did you go? Did you stay in Michigan? Did you go somewhere else?
For a few years. And then, when I got married, I moved in with my wife in Ohio, and that was about the extent of the decision. And, it was close enough that I could come back here. And I actually do like to come back here to shoot things. I think Michigan with the lake and everything is just a great location for that kind of stuff. So it was mostly just a mindset of whatever I want to do, I can probably do remotely from wherever, and I can go to the place I need to shoot something if it's about that. But my home base could be really wherever. So
yeah, I think you nailed it, and that was the big when I finished Grand Valley's film program. There was kind of seemed like half of the class was going to go out west, and then the other half were like, we're going to stay here or we're going to go somewhere else and do our own thing. And I was part of that, do my own thing, and that is what I've discovered staying in Michigan and making films, is that you don't need the permission because people are excited that you want to shoot in their restaurant or their house. They're not jaded and ask for permits and location fees and things like that. I think it is, especially if you're doing the micro budget kind of filmmaking, that it's staying wherever your home is, wherever your friends are, wherever your family are, people that can help you and are supportive. That is infinitely a greater resource than moving to LA and kind of being one of many who are trying to do the same thing, and everybody's kind of fighting for talent and locations and things like that. So I totally understand it. How about you, Charles? What was after graduation? What did you do and what were you thinking about doing?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because for a while, Jake and I were talking about how we had sort of a great symbiotic relationship going on where, he stayed in Ohio and Michigan and was able to make things more effectively. And then I, on the other hand, went out to Los Angeles and I got incredibly lucky. I went out with no plan and was all the way in Las Vegas on this trip out there. And my sister, who's also an alumni from Grand Valley, actually, she has a way of panicking about things. And so she heard I had nowhere to stay, nowhere to go. And she's panicking on the phone in her production office where she's at producing on a film in Louisiana. And we're working on a film in Louisiana, and the set accountant overhears her, says, I actually need a house sitter. Send him to my place. And then I ended up staying there for 2 years, got me my first job in the industry as a PA, as a post PA on films, The Expendables 2 and Olympus Has Fallen. And I think that really is a great prototype of just like the accidental aspect. But that being said, I ultimately left Los Angeles, and some of my other bigger credits came from being back in Michigan, like the end of the tour and Batman vs Superman. I got to be Jesse Eisenberg's stand-in on those, and it gave me a great like front row seat to how some of those bigger sets or even independent sets operate, or the mid-tier ones. And so having left there, now we are sort of leaning and thinking back into going to the Los Angeles area now that we actually have something to offer other people. Because when you go out there by yourself, it is just a saturated market with aspiring filmmakers and actors, and it can be really difficult to separate yourself. And now that we have something that looks like a studio and has some renown to it, now we have something that people want to actually talk to us about. So I think it's kind of like thinking about what assets you have, what opportunities you're going to have out there or that's waiting for you out there, and how to best prepare yourself and what's going to be the most effective for you. And, we ultimately shot our feature film Souvenirs, shot our film in Northern Michigan. So like still we had to come back here to make the budgets work, to make, find our team and, make that happen. So yeah, there's benefits to each thing. So it's hard to argue with the industry density in Los Angeles, at least half the people you talk to are going to be a part of the industry. But that also means that there's a lot of saturation and you're going to have a harder time separating yourself.
And if I could just add something,
Yeah.
I would say one concern I have, I think, about not going to a place that's highly competitive and has lots of people working toward the same thing, I think, is that you can slip into a certain amount of complacency, or you could be like the best, the most successful filmmaker, in your regional area or something, and not really be. There's a danger of not pushing yourself as far as you need to go to really be competitive outside of that, or do what you need to grow the way you need to. But I think that if you're, and this is kind of a theme for me, but I think if you're able to honestly assess what you're doing and your ability and what you need to do to improve or get to that next level, and can fight off that kind of tendency, then I definitely like having the, being in a place like the Midwest or wherever that's away from that stuff. So
yeah. And we're going to be getting into in a minute, Jake and Charles, what they're up to right now. And I see that, so we are beaming live on Facebook, and viewers can ask questions or just chime in with comments. There is a question, but I want to step back. Oh, we'll just ask it. Jazz Edwards, what's the best way to get money for your films other than crowdfunding? Are there studios that are willing to put up money for independent filmmakers? So we have our first question, but I want to. I have some. I'm afraid I'm going to forget what I'm going to ask Jake, but I won't. So this is fine. Someone is controlling the questions, and that is totally fine. This is how this is going to roll. We're just gonna do it on the fly. So I guess that's a great segue. No, before we get into the segue, we'll do what Charles and Jake are up to. Jake, after doing a little bit of internet digging around, is it true that you were in Patch Adams?
No, it's not. I think that's just that's one of those IMDb doppelganger things.
Okay.
Sorry to say I'm not in Patch Adams.
I was almost going to rent it and scrub through and look for a little kid that I kind of didn't recognize. Okay. Yeah. That was the big burning question that everybody was wanting to ask. So we just cleared that up.
Yeah, it's good to get that one out of the way.
Speak to that a little, actually. I think I could briefly speak to that, which was in college, people were starting to put your IMDb credits, because, we'd put our short films on there, onto, like, they attributed to Jake Bowen. And that one just happened to be where everything was aggregating. And I think at some point it became a conscious decision. We're just pirating that, or just commandeering that credit and not creating Jake a new one. So now he just happens to have a long-standing history.
Cool. Yeah, maybe I was in Patch Adams and I'm just lying. That's a possibility.
Okay, so back to this question about how does, that this is the quote-unquote $1 million question. How do independent filmmakers find their money? And I'm going to give because I feel that maybe Charles and Jake are like, don't have perspective on what they're doing. So I'm going to summarize what they are doing. And then you guys correct me if I'm way wrong, because I spoke with you very briefly about this, but I watched some promos. So this is a test to see if your promos are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So Jake and Charles founded a film festival called Studio Fest, and this was their third year. And so the principle of this festival is that they are looking for the work. They are screening short films, and the winner, afterwards, you can correct me up on all these mistakes. So there's one winner chosen, one filmmaker by an audience. Maybe I'm wrong on that. One writer, one director. And they are getting it wrong. They are paired up And what Charles and Jake does, the mission of the festival is they will fund their first feature film, which is a totally unique and novel approach to a festival. It's basically what every independent filmmaker assumes or hopes when they get into a festival is like, I made it. I got the golden ticket. All the producers are going to come up to me, all the financiers, my first feature, no problem. Be shooting next summer. That's basically never the case. It's never that simple. So this festival was founded with that intention to support up and coming filmmakers with their first feature film. Jake, Charles, and Charles's partner, Jess, will produce the project, see it through from beginning to end, including distribution, which we're going to get to in a moment. How do I do, guys? And then you take it from there.
It's close. It's pretty close, but it's actually it's been really difficult to quickly and easily convey all of this.
Yeah, it's hard to do the one sentence version.
Yeah. But generally, yes. So myself, Jake, and Jess, we are all producers, founders of Studio Fest, and just like you said, we were going to festivals, not getting out of those festivals what we wanted, and decided that we were going to try and do something that was going to streamline the process for filmmakers. We were going to festivals that weren't the big markets, so we're not necessarily talking about the big markets, but like we'd go to something out in Richmond, Virginia, and the theater would be empty. And, the only people there in the industry were other filmmakers who are all looking for the same opportunities you are looking for. And so, sort of dismayed, we were like, let's just make something that cuts out all the fat, that does exactly what we want in a festival, which is picks a writer and a director. So two separate people. And this is a little in flux right now because we're working through our formula. But as of where it stands right now is we pick a writer and a director. 5 writers and 5 directors are invited to our festival each year. They show their short films. We do excerpt readings from their feature-length scripts for the writers. And at the end of the weekend, a much more intimate weekend than other festivals where they get to meet and talk at a sort of a really different level with our judges and ourselves. At the end of the weekend, we pick one writer, one director to pair up, and we'll be financing, producing their debut feature film that they come together to create an idea with our guidance, brand new on a micro budget. Yeah.
Yes. So it's a really incredible kind of idea. And the fact that you were able to actually put it into fruition is amazing. Let me just ask the obvious question. Where does the financing come from?
Yeah. So the first film came from Jess and I, actually, predominantly. And we're in New York. We're working those commercial jobs. I like to joke that Souvenirs was brought to you by Walmart because I was doing a lot of Walmart commercial work. And so Jess and I put up the financing for that. We said, 50 grand was the cash budget, but then we went and got partnerships, leveraging Studio Fest as a festival, as a brand, and got partnerships with Herd City, which is a great mix facility in New York. They do a lot of commercials. And Marmoset Music, who's a really great music aggregation site where you can, pull. Jake, you've been working a lot with their assets.
It's also creation. It's not, they have a bunch of in-house musicians and a bunch of people that license their stuff through it. So it's not just like a stock site. They also create original things. And
right. Yeah. And then ShareGrid, some people might be familiar with, which is like a peer-to-peer rental system for film equipment. And they sponsored us. They heavily subsidized the cost of things. So a lot of the money went directly to the cast and crew and team members. And so overall, at the end of the day, we've elevated our budget. What is it called? In-kind budget. To closer to $200,000 rather than $50,000.
I will tell you, I did not know that you guys put up your own money. That is insane. I will tell you why that's insane, but I'm sure you already know why that's insane.
Yeah.
To all the viewers out there, I'm sorry to tell you that making money back in the independent film world is really, really difficult and takes a long time. So the fact, Charles, that you and Jeff put up your own money, why? Is it because you believed in this idea so much, or you reached out to financiers and you couldn't find anybody and you had the dates for the festival? I mean, is this the plan from now on, is to continue to self-finance these films?
It's not. And here's the deal. I think this is something that's so critical for filmmakers to understand, is that it is a film business. There's a business side of it. And so what we're paying attention to is, rather than what you're talking about is making individual films can be really difficult to make your money back. But that's why Studio Fest isn't just a singular film, it's an ecosystem. So we have a pre-marketing campaign, and that's the festival. We have something that is alluring to investors, and that's the fact that we are a studio. Whereas individual films, unless you've built your name, and which is incredibly hard, even when you've built your name, you have people like Martin Scorsese that, he still struggles to get financing for films. What's the one we were talking about, Jake? That
I think it wasn't The Irishman, maybe. I can't remember which one it was, but
yeah. So it's incredibly difficult, but if you can reduce the risk of investors, you become that much more attractive and easier to bring into, and easier to get financing. So the next films, we've already gotten predominantly, like a large portion, financed through investors, because we have a larger system, a larger ecosystem than just one-off films. Now they know that if they're investing in something, we have the relationships, we're bringing it to it. We have the track record as producers that we're bringing to it. And yeah, we have just a lot more to offer than a one-off film might typically offer.
And I think a key to that too is that if you were just putting up your money for one film one time, none of that 150,000 extra added value through sponsorships and everything would have probably come in, because it's just for a one-off film, and so the festival and the structure around it is what drew in that additional stuff. So there is some of your own money in it, but it's a movie that looks and sounds and is bigger than what that number would otherwise indicate, and therefore it's got a lot better shot at making its money back. So, and then some, maybe. So
right. And so is for Jake and Charles, is this your full-time jobs, both running Studio Fest and producing these films, or seems like a lot of work?
Yeah, we're actually using the pandemic to transition into making it full-time. Everything's gotten a little more streamlined. I will admit that unemployment has been happen, in New York, things aren't exactly winding back up yet. And so, yeah, we're using this opportunity to transition into making this totally full-time. But I will say it's been like a full-time job on top of other full-time jobs that we've been doing. So,
yeah. And if I could touch on the viewer's question a little bit, I just wanted to say that I think that to some degree, that question they ask, where they're basically saying, how does this work? Is there a pool of money sitting in studios somewhere that they're just waiting to give out to people with cool ideas? Or I'm not sure exactly how they're imagining it, but I think that a lot of people, filmmakers, up and coming people, have that perception, or they aren't sure because it's not clear how this all works. And part of that's because it's always changing, and the way it works now is different from before. But part of that, I think, is just that there's a lot of kind of mysticism around it all. And I think that in some ways, Studio Fest came out of that very thing, that it's that frustration of how do you get something funded. And there's sort of a paradox to our ethos about this, because on the one hand, the Studio Fest is trying to be that thing, that sort of unicorn that just takes in some filmmakers and hands them a budget if they earn it. And on the other hand, our kind of position on this stuff, and I'm channeling Jess here, she likes to quote Mark Duplass saying, "The cavalry isn't coming," where it's like that some of that is just, it's not to say it never happens, but it is so rare, even for people who have sometimes gotten through Sundance or are established. It's so rare to just have your movie financed by somebody, just handed to you like that. People will lose years and decades at a time trying to chase that unicorn. I said that already, but sometimes. And so I feel like the short answer to that question generally for most people is just no. To that, is there a studio that's going to give you money? Unless you're like in that system and you're compromising a lot on what you want to do. If what you're talking about is making a movie that is yours and you have full, creative control over it, and it's something you want to do, and it's not checking all the boxes of market viability that would be on some spreadsheet somewhere in a studio, the answer is probably no, unless you're going through Studio Fest, maybe. Yeah. And so that's kind of, and also that sideshow, or that show that we're working on that we'll probably talk about later, is kind of addressing some of this. So.
Yeah, that quote that you just mentioned, if everybody listening, if you are an aspiring filmmaker, you need to look up Mark Duplass's South by Southwest keynote speech. It's about an hour long, and he just drops. I mean, Mark Duplass has done it his own way and carved out his own niche and has become incredibly successful. And he kind of lays out how he pulled that off in this speech. That's on YouTube.
We're taking a short break to tell you about the Chuck Peterson Memorial Fellowship. The fellowship was established by Chuck Peterson's family and friends to assist the upper-level students in the film and video program at GVSU who are working on creative projects that support the nonprofit sector in their community. Kyle Matchame, the 2020 recipient of that fellowship, describes the benefits of the support he received.
When going through this fellowship, there are 3 separate parts of yourself that I think get to experience a lot of development. The first is as a student, because this is a learning process. You get to learn how to work with a client on your own, independently out in the world, away from the classroom like you would in something like producing for clients. And the second one would be as a video maker, as a video producer, as someone who has respect for the work that they're doing and wants to improve on themselves and produce a final product that can be used out in the real world. And then the third one would be as a citizen. You know, you're not making video for an entertainment value or for some kind of commercial purpose. It's for a nonprofit. It's for a direct benefit in your community. And being a citizen of that community, understanding how you can directly impact and improve it is a really valuable experience that I think the fellowship teaches you to be as a student, as a filmmaker, and as a citizen. All 3 of those things are directly a part of this process that you get to learn and ask yourself, how do I want to be seen and how do I want to act as these 3 roles?
For more information and to donate to the scholarship, visit the link in the description. Now back to the show.
So speaking of Studio Fest and your first film, the first film that was produced through Studio Fest was Souvenirs. And we're going to talk about where the process is right now. But I thought before we get too much into the film so if you guys want to just briefly talk about what we're going to see here, and we'll watch it. Or we're just going to watch it.
This one?
You would have had Lilith starve. She has a right to eat, you know. Snakes are friends to women. Since all the way back in the garden, Adam would have kept us barefoot and pregnant, ignorant to complain.
Hey,
Love that final image. Mouse dead in the mouth. So
yeah, Jake actually shot that on a Black Magic.
Yeah, that was a pickup.
oh, it's great.
The snake wouldn't behave on the actual shoot
I
days.
was wondering if you guys just conveniently had a snake eat a mouse, while the clock is ticking and the money is draining out of the bankroll as you're waiting for this to happen. So that was a clip from the first feature film produced and financed by Studio Fest called Souvenirs. So Jake and Charles, how did you come to select Matt and Anna, who are the writer and director of this film? And what did you see in them that gave you the confidence that they could make a successful feature film?
Yeah, I think that's something that I think Jess and I for this first film probably vocalized much more as to why we selected Matt and Anna. And Matt, to start with Matt, the writer, I would say he really showed a masterful perspective on structure, which is something that we felt was missing in a lot of the writers that we were looking into or the people that were coming to us. It's structure is something that you really should know you really should know the basics. And I don't even think structure is difficult. So you really should master that where a mastery of that will help you be able to play with the other elements, I would say. So structure is just incredibly important, and especially important, we think, in this process. It helps us with our process and knowing if it's something we all get behind and are feeling right, we should have our foundation stuff. So we're looking for a lot of foundational elements. So with writers, structure is very important to me. Jess would probably vocalize something else, but for me, I look for structure.
He's also a workhorse too, by the way.
He's a workhorse. He pumped out a script every month for 3 months in a row doing this. So he really killed it. And we're excited to continue to be working with him.
So you have writers and directors, they submit a short film or they also submit a script?
Yeah. So we're inviting 5 directors and 5 writers. There's 10 people total, and our writers should be submitting, and I'm sure the link will come up here, but the writers should be submitting a feature length script, and directors, people who want to be considered for the directing position, should be submitting a finished short film. And nobody can have their debut feature having been produced yet. So, that's where we come in. We're trying to get you to that next level. But all of that being considered, we are still, perfecting our formula. It's got room to grow. So this year, we're actually not only making one film with our winners, but we've actually selected another one of the finalists whose script we optioned, and they are both writing and directing a feature. That person is writing and directing a feature for us. So we'll be doing 2 features. That's what we're prepping anyway at the moment.
And just to clarify real quick, the movie Souvenirs was a completely original product. Like it wasn't a script that was submitted and then turned into it. Although that could happen. That's not like precluded by the rules or anything, but most of the time, or in this case anyway, it was an original idea.
Yeah.
So.
One of the reasons why we want to create something new is because we don't want to be like some of those other competitions out there that sort of like take your product and then run with it, and then you get kind of left in the dust. So we're partners. We're not here to do that. If you don't feel comfortable with us, producing or coming on for your script, we're not even going to inquire. So, this is a unique case with this other film where the script, he was very into our process. And so we're taking it all the way in that form as well.
And so that writer's name was Matt Servillo. Servillo, is that correct?
So Matt Servillo is the winner of La Fenicia and did Souvenirs. And Anna McCamey is the director. And we really loved how she was getting her performances up. If you go through her short films, she's got a very nice variety, all with solid performances. And that, you can tell is she actually comes from an actor background. And we just thought acting, story and acting are so critical to independent films. And, you can get away with not the best equipment, but as long as your story's there and the actors and the performances are believable, you're going to be in a good position. So those were what we looked for.
So the film was shot and is complete. And the next step for filmmakers is, after the high of getting it completed and picture locked, is the confusing and difficult part of finding distribution. So this is where Studio Fest has kind of branched off into, new heights here, where Charles and Jake and Jess are producing a television series, a nonfiction web series, which follows their trials and tribulations of getting distribution for this film and for future films. It's called Demystified. And it is a YouTube series that is hosted by Movie Maker. So you can find the link online on YouTube or Movie Maker. There's 4 episodes. They're 4 deep right now, still going. I have watched all 4 episodes, guys.
Oh.
And the first 4 mostly focus on, so you guys just kind of this new territory of the American film market. And watching those first 4 episodes, especially episodes 2 and 3, I just had that sick hit in my stomach listening. I'll just be straight up. You guys can gloss over if you want, but listening to the way that Hollywood talks about the commodities, which are your films, and the product and the content you're filling, they give you these I've been to American film market twice, not ever, mostly kind of out of sick fascination, because, and which is great about this is that it seems like you guys kind of come to the realization that most independent filmmakers come to after you have talked to a lot of people. The film market is like, this is not where we want to be. Filmmakers that I know, where before I went, they give you a free pass to it if you have your film in AFI Fest. So a lot of filmmakers just kind of go almost as a goof because it is so not our world, at least the world that I'm in. And then we see it as a meat market where it's like, you need the things that tell you. You have to have a name actor. You have to have a decent budget or pump up the budget. You have to find the trends. What are people looking for? Stay away from drama. It's like, to me, as an independent filmmaker, that is some of the worst advice you could possibly get. However, if you are somebody who really I want to build a career now, and I want to be a director, I don't really have anything to say. I just want to be a director. So how do I break in? I think they have pretty solid advice for the industry, but as somebody who's really trying to make a name for themselves and do things that they want to do, you guys heard all of the poisons firsthand at the American film market. So let's hear a little bit about Demystified, how this came together, your experiences shooting it, and where you're at with the release of the series.
Yeah. So I'm sort of I'm making I'm doing the editing for those and sort of the voice of it. Jess and Charles have done most of the actual recording, and they're usually the ones having the meetings with folks that show up in those things. Yeah. The idea behind the series is, as the name implies, I guess, is we're trying to figure out how this stuff works. And it's often very frustrating getting any kind of actionable advice or useful information on how things like, financing or distribution or any of that stuff works. And so we're like, why don't we just record what we're doing as we're doing it, watch us fumble through it, and then tell people what we see and hear. And yeah, the AFM was, we went into it somewhat with that kind of trepidation that you described, because it does have, it has a bit of a reputation, and we saw that firsthand. And I think in one of the episodes, we talk a little bit about how it kind of almost, it's just depressing almost being in there, like the kind of schlocky stuff that's very formulaic and clearly trying to take advantage of trends that goes on there. So what I was hoping to do, and what hopefully comes through, and we really debated the tone of this and how, where we stood on a lot of this, but what I'm hoping comes through in those first episodes about it is that there are useful pieces of information that filmmakers of various kinds can take. And for instance, some people, the film they want to make, even if it is in its purest artistic form, might actually just happen to also be really, something that could very well work very well in that kind of, sort of checklist style distribution atmosphere. And that's great to know, or even just one of the biggest things I wanted to know was, is it even feasible to make money back on a movie? And that's how little I felt, or how not confident I felt going into that about any of the information I'd ever heard. You hear sort of rules of thumb and stuff. So we were trying to just kind of break in. I'll let people watch it to get the specifics from there, but we were just trying to get a sense for what the market really looks like. And this is, of course, just one market. We actually were going to show Cannes as well, but COVID kind of put nixed that. But yeah, that tension is certainly there, was certainly felt, and we kind of talked a lot about how we wanted to what we wanted to say about that. And I hope that my kind of the summary that goes on, I think at the end of episode 2, when we kind of wrap up the AFM stuff, sort of gives the full picture, I guess, of my feelings on how one should take in that information and how big of a grain of salt it should be taken with.
Yeah, I think the show is endlessly fascinating. Especially, I mean, if you're like an independent filmmaker, I think it's required viewing, like at this point, because
thank you.
So many film schools do not cover like the business of and what happens after you make your film. And this is not just you guys going there and asking questions. You are actively looking for distribution for souvenirs. So there are stakes in this, and you're learning, and the audience is learning along with it. And I think that you're never biased towards it, but you do let us know how you feel and what your intentions are as filmmakers coming into the market and leaving the market. And I think from my experience, you guys really did a great job of covering what on in this market, why you would go there, and why you would leave completely heartbroken as well if you go in with the wrong intentions. I think in your exact situation, you go there kind of blind. You have a film, you're looking for distribution. I got to tell you, the reason I kept watching after episode 1, I was like, oh no, this is going to end badly. I have to make good TV. I was like, this isn't going to have the ending after they talk to everybody. And we're not going to spoil the rest of the season. So we're not going to talk about where Souvenirs is right now with distribution. But there are some successes that you are finding through. I mean, you guys know, I've only seen through episode 4, but I think it's great to just see the journey of Souvenirs through this show and weighing all the pros and cons. And I've gone through all of those exact dilemmas and have the conversations with the lawyers and just asking other filmmakers. And it is the experience of looking for distribution.
Yeah, it's funny. After the first one came out, the managing director of AFM proliferated us, friended us, retweeted, loved it. And then of course,
you haven't seen the
radio silence after the second one.
Well, I don't think that you guys are saying anything necessarily. Like I said, there's no bias there. You're just putting it out exactly what they do, and this is what it's like. It is. And you talk about, I think these companies putting out Battle War Galactic.
Yeah. Battle Star Wars is what it's called. Yes.
Here we go. Battles. And I to me, that's why I love going just kind of fascination, see what Trauma is doing and
yeah.
And the Asylum. It's just like, they're all there and you can kind of just go and talk to people. But I think going in with the realistic expectations that you're going to walk out with a deal and make a bunch of money is kind of shattering.
Yeah.
We do have questions that are coming in. So if you got them, we're only going to be talking for another 10 minutes. So viewers, if now is the time to ask them, flood us with questions. So if you have a question about your particular Grand Valley experiences and how does graduating from Grand Valley play into your filmmaking experience? Jake and Charles, what do you got for us?
Well, I really value having gone to Grand Valley. I think it's almost a cliche of the film, kind of being an aspiring filmmaker deciding whether to go to college or not. You'll hear conflicting information about that. Often people say, don't go to film school, go to business school or something and, teach yourself on the side. And then other people who are defenders of that school path or whatever, and even into grad school or something. And like with a lot of things, I think that there's wisdom in both of those things. I think what I really value from Grand Valley was you have access, any good film school should have access to resources, information, a chance to force you to do some things. And I think that this kind of touches back on the decision whether or not to move out to LA. I think the location and the ability to just kind of experiment and try something out, not go into hopeless debt while doing it, and shoot in a place that isn't covered in red tape and all that stuff. I really valued that. And especially in particular, I would say the summer film, which is where I actually met Charles, that I worked on, the summer film project that Grand Valley does. That was a major experience that I've carried. I've learned a lot of lessons, some in what to do and some in what not to do coming out of that. And so I guess my Grand Valley experience, I guess the question, I want to make sure I touch on the question exactly, but I think that it informs me somewhat in my kind of sense that I want to work outside of the sort of LA system, I guess, but also with an eye toward, with an aim at doing work that could survive there and be of that caliber and not just be, again, like regionally interesting and never go anywhere outside of that. And so I think that it's sort of I felt like it was sort of a good, a sweet spot between not going to film school and going to like a USC or something.
I'll follow that up with, I've had the good fortune of working with, you, Jake, since we met at Grand Valley. We've worked together since then, as well as a number of other people, Melissa Bayer, Alessandro Commento, Brian Kung, and Ben Barker. Yeah, that was like our core team out of college. And I've had the, privilege to be able to work with each of you since then. And so I'd say one of the biggest benefits of the Grand Valley program, at the very least, was making lifelong filmmaking friends and partners. And then I think the summer film project is such a unique experience because it is really it was a great, jump in the deep end of how serious a set can be, and how good a product can come out of that. So,
yeah, I had to learn how to be an art director without ever doing anything close to art directing, and managing people and everything, just thrown right in, so that was a great experience for sure.
The American film market's rubbing off on you, Charles. I heard you call a movie a product, so be careful with that.
I know. Look, that's my role. That's the character I'm playing in the series. I'm the business oriented one. So
Yeah,
don't worry. I'm into the art, but it's a character I'm playing, and I'm playing that method. I'm going that.
I had a scary moment there. The custodian knocked on my door and I answered it without a mask. So facing people. It was the guy that you just saw on camera, but I got censored. So maybe that was okay. So this what we're doing right now is basically, I'll just say it's kind of a way for Grand Valley to get their name out and talk about the program. And you guys did a great job promoting it, saying great things. Where did Grand Valley leave you hanging? What are the things that you wish now, looking back, that the film program would have told you about and informed you about a little bit better?
I would say, I think when I got my hands on my first, I'm blanking on the name of it now. It was the European version of the Rebel T2i, but a DSLR camera. Those sort of hit the last couple years that I was in college, and it was like this switch flipped where all this stuff that had been theory basically up to this point, suddenly you could actually get an image that actually looked good instead of off of like some handy cam, like that's the same as what your dad used to record home videos or whatever. I was really halfway through college, I was really struggling with that, and just having that hands-on experience taught me a lot, or made a lot of it click in a way that it hadn't prior to that. And I think the reason for that is, and I doubt this is a issue of Grand Valley specifically, but I think the reason for that is that the industry and the technology in the industry changes so much, and it's an art form that is heavily reliant on it, or its technology, or it's paired with that very heavily, in some ways more so than a lot of other art forms, and it's changing all the time. And I think that what often happens is people who came up in a certain era and then are now teaching or spreading their wisdom to the next cohort or whatever, next generation, are often talking from the perspective of what was pertinent and what the wisdom was at the time they came up. And as a result, I think a lot of the stuff that we were learning, the theory was really sound, or the practices were sound, but it was often based on the assumption essentially that we were going to be shooting on Super 8 or like 16 millimeter film with film cameras or something like that. And it wasn't really, a lot of it was not very practically applicable to with the resources we actually had available to us. Yeah. And that, and I only say that to suggest that like a lot of it, I guess in some ways it felt like I could have learned a lot of it faster and gotten to where I felt I did get to sooner if I just knew exactly what it was I didn't know and needed to know, if that makes sense. There was a certain amount of like, I can tell that this image from a movie I like looks great, and I can tell that my attempt at mimicking it looks terrible. And there's a whole bunch of, there's a million reasons why that is, and it's hard for me to even articulate what they are, to even ask the questions I need to ask to figure out what I need to learn to get there. And so I think some of it, I guess, is just that maybe being always on top of trying to understand like what is the current wisdom that needs to be imparted, I guess. Maybe that would be my critique.
Charles, we only got a couple more minutes. What do you got?
Yeah, I'll just say I'm not a fair person to ask that too. I got a by proxy education because I was actually a theater major that acting in everybody's films, and so I got to pick and choose which people I wanted to work with, and learn directly from them. So like actually Jake is one of the big inspirations behind my education, with at least in the visual element and some of the storytelling elements. So I got a different lens in the education, so I can't really say what I missed out on.
Let me throw one more thing in real quick that I liked about Grand Valley also, is that I think a lot of film programs in other places kind of can focus on making you into a director, let's say, like that specialization. And I really valued the kind of shotgun approach, spread approach of Grand Valley, where it never even occurred to me to not just try to learn editing and lighting and cinematography and special effects and all that stuff that was just always on the menu. And so even though it made me, I think, kind of still a jack of all trades or whatever toward the end of it, and not really a master of anything yet, I think it set me up to be a much more powerful director, especially for this environment where you really need to be able to do a lot of stuff on your own if you want to succeed. So I appreciate that about it too.
Yeah, I think Robert Rodriguez said to be successful, you need to be creative and technically savvy. And I think that is true. You need to be able to do you need to be jumped in. At a micro budget level, some days the sound guy is just going to bail because he's got to work, and you have to be able to run sound or run camera,
and now more than ever.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that is crucial. And I would add, which is so fascinating to me, which I think is so important for Demystified, is that I always tell the students now, it's not just creative and technical, but it's also, you need to know the business side of it, because DSLR cameras did come up right around 2011. And that is how I was able to become a filmmaker, to make films that looked, but that means that the pool of filmmakers,
right,
by tenfold increased, which means the submissions to film festivals increased by tenfold. So the competition, if you want to use that word, is so incredibly intense that I think making a good film is one step, but being able to find where that goes to give it the right festival, the right distribution, is equally as important as the script and the production at this point. And I think that's what, shows like Demystified, or even shows like The Chair, or Robert Rodriguez has a show, Rebel Without a Crew. I think these are what filmmakers today need to start watching and reading to be up on how to do everything yourself and how to get past the other people who are trying to submit to South by Southwest or Sundance or things like that. Like, how do you rise above? And that's making the right decisions, talking to lawyers and all these awful businessy, producery type things. I think directors need to know that stuff just as much as producers, because you kind of have to just produce your own work when you're starting off, especially when you're making your first feature. That's from my
And I think it's going more in that direction, honestly. Like just more than ever, that's true.
Yeah.
Before we go, I would like to say that any Grand Valley alum or students can submit to Studio Fest for free there's a code that we're going to put up. It's GV alumni. If they use that on filmfreeway.com/studiofest or studiofest.com/submit, they can submit their work to us and get a free waiver.
The question you're going to get now is, hey, I went to Grand Valley. Can I get special treatment? Will you give me a better look?
No special treatment.
Good.
Yeah. Yep.
It's asked all the time what festivals to submit to, and I think you have to be realistic about what you made. I think Studio Fest just absolutely makes sense. If you feel strongly that you have this, and this is, you said a short film or a feature-length script, they could submit, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right. And if you want to do both, don't be afraid to submit to us. Just put in the notes that you're interested in both, because we're starting to expand into, sort of the auteur aspect. Yeah, so somebody who can do both.
Yeah, love it. Okay, guys, so check out Demystified on YouTube and make sure you go to submit your stuff on Studio Fest, or at least just check out the website to see what they're up to and how it all works. Charles and Jake, thanks for hanging out with us for an hour. And
yeah, thank you, Joel.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so all right, we'll talk to everybody in the Matrix later on. See you guys.
All right.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Alumni Live, the podcast. Subscribe to our podcast to hear more from our alumni across the industry. Check out Alumni Live on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more conversations and networking. Let us know what topics you want to hear our alumni talk about. The Grand Valley State University Film Video Alumni Network is here for you, and we're glad that you're here. Thank you for listening.